your name, what are you running for, and what are your qualifications?
My name's Todd Williams. I am the Buncombe County District Attorney, and I'm running for re-election. I'm a board certified specialist in criminal law. I served as a public defender for 15 years prior to being the district attorney, represented folks at all levels from misdemeanor to murder, and served as a capital defender as well. I've been the district attorney, excuse me. I've been the district attorney since 2015, elected here after defeating a 24-year incumbent.
What new programs do you envision implementing or changes made that will improve the effectiveness of the district attorney's office going forward?
Interesting, okay. We continue to look towards growing our services that are offered through Diversion for offenders, and continuing to foster our relationships with the Family Justice Center and the Child Advocacy Center. One of the big things that I'm excited about is we won a grant, federal grant in the last year, so that we're going to get an MSW master's level. It doesn't have to be an MSW, it could be an LCSW, it could be a master's level qualified therapist to do trauma work with victims who suffer trauma, to better prepare them for trial and better present the case to juries and whatnot. And you know, it's very traumatic to confront someone who's done something to you and injured you, and it's exciting to have that service in-house. So on both sides, I'm looking at some new programs to address and hopefully reduce gun violence through diversion, and addressing the root cause of what drives that, so that we don't have charges and we don't have shootings, and we're responding to it after the fact, and similarly bolster services to victims. So we try to do those things in parallel.
Okay. Would you enforce the law and commit to setting bonds high enough to keep criminals in jail and off the streets? What programs and policies would you implement as district attorney to reduce crime and increase public safety in the county going forward?
I love that question. I love that question because the district attorney's office does not set a single solitary bond, okay? District attorney's office is solely an advocate before the court. Obviously, the district attorney's office also doesn't do the arrests. We don't have squad cars. We don't put people in handcuffs. We are solely advocates before the court, before a judge, and we can advocate for a bond on a case. But we have I think 11 or 12 judges in Buncombe County Courthouse. Some of them rotate in from out of county in Superior Court, but by and large, especially the local ones in District Court, they are very, if you will, humane, right? And so throughout the pandemic, there's been a lot of concern about housing the right people in custody, identifying who is the public safety threat, and the priority has been given to violent crime, quite honestly, because of space and housing. The district attorney's office doesn't set particularly those policies, right? That's a sheriff's issue. Same thing with the number of beds that are in the jail. That's not the district attorney's purview. However, it has been our role to work collaboratively with law enforcement. And we have, like just this past week, we had someone who was charged with a gun crime, and he had a prior gun crime within 5 years. And we were able to use the bond statute, to raise his bond from $13,000 secured to no bond, right? Because there's no set of facts. It's just the public safety threat is just too high. So we're continuing to work with our law enforcement partners to identify those kinds of cases. But no, the district attorney's office does not set any bond.
Who sets the bonds?
Okay, that's an excellent question. And I really appreciate the opportunity to explain this, because when law enforcement arrests someone, they have discretion at that point to, well, if it's an arrest, they take them downtown to the magistrate. Law enforcement also has discretion, number one, not to arrest, right? They don't have to arrest. They can issue a citation, right? And the person can go on their way. Those things happen, right? Those things actually do happen in our community. But assuming that they're arrested and they're taken downtown before a magistrate, once there, the magistrate sets the initial date and the bond. There is no district attorney at that level of the court process. And the magistrates, just like the district court judges, are hearing the concerns about space in the jail and the policy focus, about not wanting to spend $40 million to build an annex or an additional, housing unit for the jail. So there is, I'm being quite candid with you, there's a constant sort of pressure as judges and magistrates are looking at who we're going to keep in, who we're going to keep out. So the problem, especially with homelessness, is if they get an unsecured bond or they get a written promise, turn around, sign themselves right back out, they get their court date. If they're homeless, they're transient, they very often don't show up to court. So there's a lack of, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but frankly, there's a lack of enforcement. All right?
Okay.
So sorry if that was long-winded.
No, that's good. I think that was important
like I
to get cleared up. Let's see. Do you support diversion and mentor programs for first-time offenders ages 18 to 25? If so, what would you do as DA going forward to promote such programs?
Well, I created them. I created them in 2015. We started doing diversion programs. We expanded our treatment court to include veterans treatment court. And veterans treatment court to me is the pole star of all these things because, if you've got someone who's got an injury or PTSD or whatever, if we can coordinate them with the services down at our fantastic VA, they can get physical therapy, they can get substance abuse treatment, psychological services, and hopefully we can get past the criminal conduct and address the root cause of the problem. I just recently created the Unhoused diversion program. And frankly, in addition, concurrently with that, we set up a partnership with APD so that we're constantly looking for who are the folks who are escalating in their conduct downtown so that we can get them, before there's a problem, we can get them diverted and into some sort of service so that we're addressing that root thing. Now, once we get past like the public urination and the, trespassing, and that conduct has escalated, there's not a single crime on the books that I've ever declared that we won't prosecute, right? And the other thing about diversion is, the way our diversion is set up, is if you are diverted and you blow it off and you don't do it, you're back on the calendar in court, all right? Now again, we'll still confront the same thing we were just talking about. Our judge is going to enforce that court date, and if they miss it, are they going to get locked up? That's a question. We can advocate for that to happen, but judges don't necessarily have to do what we advocate for. So, sorry again.
No, that makes sense.
I get going like a
that's
steam
good.
train. So,
what is your stand on bonds, and do you believe that in the no bond agenda put forth by many activists?
Activists in this community or just, well, it's interesting that, I just said that we got a no bond. And really, under the statute, no bond means you are locked up.
I think they mean
I know.
the opposite of what you're
yes,
saying.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. And I know that they don't mean that, but, I think that that's a question for the legislature. Mm-hmm. That is not a DA question. In addition to that, the judges set local bond policies. Like many bond policies might have a schedule for, if it's a class H felony, not to talk Greek, but if it's a certain kind of class of crime or whatever, this is the presumptive bond, right? Judges do that. So there's a statewide thing that Raleigh can address, and if they want to do that, that's a policy decision that should be had down in Raleigh, and then our local judges can address that as well.
How would you manage going forward enforcing laws surrounding homelessness? Because we know that's been a major issue and controversy lately as things have ramped up.
Well, it's kind of hard to cast forward when this is just sort of like you're prodding me to just sort of every case is dependent upon the quality of the investigation, what kind of witnesses we have, and what the law says, right? So I'm just sort of spitballing, but I'm not really able to respond to your question because there's not enough factual background. But I will again say that there's, if there's a law that's on the books, it's potentially divertible. It's potentially, a matter that's in court that we will prosecute. I've not said that there's not, that there's not a case that we're not going to handle.
So in regards to like drug dealing, prostitution that happens around that, property, breaking into people's property,
prostitution cases
are
charged extremely, extremely rarely these days. And again, before we're involved, we need law enforcement to charge it. We hardly ever see a prostitution charge these days.
Maybe go down
drugs,
the list.
Drugs, we absolutely prosecute drugs.
So drugs prosecuted,
and
stealing,
if
breaking and entering.
All this depends upon what an individual's record level is. If it's a first-time offender, again, we might be dealing with a veteran from the Iraq War who's transitioned from OxyContin, something he was prescribed, to fentanyl. All right, so there's going to be that level of discretion in all these cases, and I think that folks in Asheville do expect our justice system to be humane around those issues. So it's very fact specific and it's very person centered. It's kind of hard to respond, just sort of full field. I understand and I hear that that there's a big problem with the management of, I think, homelessness services in our community and the provision of those services that's causing issues for people. And I'm concerned that if the new enterprises that are coming online aren't managed appropriately, we're going to have a lot of trouble. And I don't think, I think that the answers should be, they're going to come from municipal entities that are going to get to the root cause of it, more than the handcuffs and us putting people in custody on the back end. Now, I'm not trying to make excuses. I just really think that the problems will be solved on the front end that way.
But then there's those people who don't want to participate in programs, right? And so if those people are repeat offenders, that's when,
again, we have to, we're guided by the law, right? Mm-hmm. And if it's a low-level misdemeanor, there's not a lot we're gonna be able to do with it. With a homeless person, we can't really find them much. There's not a lot of jail time. It's hard to put a homeless person on probation. But if we're talking about a felony, that's different. If someone's escalating, they won't do the programs, whatever, then maybe they need to be on probation. I just said it's hard to supervise somebody, but still, maybe they have to get the felony charge. And if they come back in the system, we'll give them another one, right? And maybe next time they've not done anything on probation, they're not a good candidate for probation, so they end up, housed in a state facility. And sometimes, a lot of people, shriek like, oh, that's horrible. I've seen that there are sometimes good outcomes from that because people get time out and are able to, connect with, a better place in their hearts and souls while they're in that position.
Do you stand by victims of crime and put their needs ahead of the criminal needs?
We have certainly prioritized victim services through the Family Justice Center and Child Advocacy Center. We take great care to notify every victim that has a case, in the courthouse. Now, there are mistakes, and we're all human, but it is a very high priority. The thing about your question, though, is that the foundation of the criminal justice system is, it's the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, and all those go to citizens' rights as they are accused of crime. So the foundation, grows from that. And, the Victims of Crime Act and these other, provisions are appendages to the law to ensure that victims are properly served. So that's an unfortunate thing about our criminal justice system, but it's the way our Constitution is set up. And in regard to this is just sort of a gut level thing that it's sort of just something to think about. I think people understand that someone that's charged with murder has a right to an attorney, a jury trial, right to confront the witnesses against them, have a right to review the case file and the discovery to prepare a meaningful trial, meaningful defense. But in talking to people around the community, I think that there's a lot of frustration about the small stuff. But the folks that are charged with, say, public urination or whatever, they also have all those rights, right? So it's not go to jail, do not pass go. They still have the right to, confront the witnesses, have a trial, et cetera, et cetera.
What would your office policies be regarding plea bargaining and drug offense cases going forward?
Again, it's very, very fact specific. I mean, the broadest statement of the policy is we prioritize drug trafficking. We're trying to take drug traffickers off the streets. You can go on my Twitter, Buncombe, but it's not my Twitter, it's the office's Twitter, @BuncombeCoDA, and you'll see that we have a constant stream of convictions of folks who are selling very dangerous street drugs. And the street drugs that we have right now are as dangerous as they've ever been, right? And again, in terms of the provision of homelessness services in our community and whatnot, I think we're sometimes getting a little sideways, in terms of there needs to be accountability, right? So I think I'm trying to respond to some of your,
yes.
There needs to be accountability, because if there's never any accountability, we're gonna see, these new facilities open up and they're gonna become dens, nuisances to the neighbors, nuisances to the community, and not really providing good service to the folks that are housed there, right?
Yeah.
And that's my concern, long range. So we have to continue to analyze each case by case on the lower level stuff, not the trafficking stuff. Some people, if they're selling drugs that's not a trafficking amount, they are going to go to prison. If it's personal use, generally it's highly unlikely that there's going to be prison involved with that. Where there's going to be treatment, there's going to be probation in a more serious case. But that's our general philosophy on those crimes.
Okay. Final question, and this is off the cuff because it kind of plays into some of what you've been talking about. And I don't have it in front of me, so I'm gonna just go with it. But as far as nuisance areas, are you willing to support the nuisance abatement for nuisance areas in the community as far as your position as DA?
The statute gives the DA authority to request an investigation from the alcohol law enforcement wing of Department of Public Safety. And that has been a discussion. Frankly, I would like to see the most interested party step up, and that would be the city, and initiate that. And I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but if for whatever reason that doesn't occur, it's something that's on the table. And again, I think that number one, nuisance abatement doesn't necessarily mean we're going to padlock the doors and close it down. Just like criminal prosecution, a lot of, you have a charge hanging over you. Now it's an opportunity for us to kind of use carrot and stick. We're going to incentivize, the carrot, go for the gold, if you will. Heal yourself, heal thyself, right? Same thing with the nuisance abatement. Come into compliance. There's an appropriate way for you to be in the community. What's happening now is not appropriate, right? The nuclear option is to padlock the doors, do a foreclosure sale or however that works, and end it.
Especially
but the goal wouldn't necessarily be that. The goal would be to modify the behavior long before that, right?
Right. Okay.
So.
And then we'll end on final thoughts.
And I talked over what you were saying something.
No. I was just saying, especially when it's been going on for so long. If it's been a 3-year process of just dealing with such a nuisance in the community, and it just feels like it's never ending and nobody's done anything about it. Of course, you want it padlocked right away. But realistically,
well, this has been something that's been growing and it's been evolving, right? I mean, there was violence and homelessness before the pandemic, right? And fortunately, we've seen kind of a flat line, and even APD says that, shootings are down 18%. So that's one win. Now we have seen this escalate, right? And during the pandemic, we had, APD staffing go like this. And, Chief Zach had to make decisions. he pulled staff out of downtown and said that he wasn't going to respond. They didn't have the staffing to respond to certain crimes. So, I mean, there's this whole network of policy decisions and things that need to be recentered and refocused as we move out of this. And I think, in fairness to the folks that are providing service, I think that the community broadly does want, in general, competent services to be given, but they don't necessarily want what we're seeing. And I think that the agency should have an opportunity to correct it before they get shut down.
And just to clarify, when you say that you would like the city to initiate these types of nuisance abatement situations,
I think it's just a directly, it's a municipal.
So you mean city council, mayor,
nuisance
city manager?
Nuisance abatement is just interesting, right? Because it's the one area of civil law that the district attorney has some jurisdiction in. We don't file lawsuits, right? We prosecute charges, right? So the city attorney they have civil lawyers on staff, right? There are a lot of folks in the community that are raising this issue, and I think first and foremost it would be the city government, the municipal fathers of the community that would actually now I guess we got an all-female mothers of city council who would first address this. But I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I do think that it would be helpful if the district attorney's office had a partner to collaborate with on that.
Absolutely. All right, let's finish on a final thought, something you'd like for your constituents to know going forward and why they should vote for you.
Well, I ran in 2014 and I ran on a platform of restoring the integrity of the district attorney's office, because we had the Innocence Commission here in Buncombe County find that ultimately 5 African American males had been railroaded on evidence that was withheld. They went off to prison. They did not do the crime that they had committed. I ran to restore the integrity of the district attorney's office, and we've made great strides to provide new and additional and enhanced services for victims, and all we've talked about in this conversation in terms of trying to get to the root of the problem, if it be drug use or veteran services, juvenile diversion. We've and just recently the Unhoused diversion. We continue to look for new opportunities, and I guess I didn't really have a chance to talk about it, but gun crime, a new gun crime diversion program modeled after what Savannah is doing. It's something I'm looking at, and I'm looking for partners. So we're always looking for new opportunities to broaden the scope of justice in our community, and that's what we've been committed to do for the last 7 years. And I think the opportunity to talk to you and the folks that are viewing this video.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you.
Thank you.